Actually, it's this occult life, adventures in the hidden worlds. So, what occult life, you may ask? I'm not an occultist, I don't do any occult stuff. But of course, occult really means hidden, that's all. And the life that we know on this physical world is merely the tip of an iceberg. The vast quantity of our life resides on the inner planes. And this is just the material chip, as it were, just floating on the sea of existence. And it is possible to actually access these inner worlds in consciousness, full consciousness, if we know how, or if it just happens to us naturally, which is the case in some people's lives. We know that we do operate on the inner worlds, the mental plane, the astral plane, the etheric plane, as well as the physical plane, because we have a mind which works on the mental plane. Our emotions are seated in the astral plane, and that's where they generate their feelings for us and where we can generate them ourselves. And we have an etheric body which powers our physical body. And that's constantly with us. The difference is, though, we can have all these thoughts and feelings, but if we try to open our awareness in these worlds as separate planes, just like we do here now, then that's not quite so easy. Now, I don't want to give this talk as a talk. I gave a talk on Sunday, which was all laid out and put down for you. People who know me know that I work best when I'm subject to questions and answers and discussion. And over the years, I've always encouraged in talks, in lodges and other meetings, for people to interrupt me and say what they think, what they feel, what they want to know. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that more? That's a better dialogue between us, and I encourage that tonight. So I haven't really prepared a talk as such. I did have a talk, it was about 15 pages long. And when I looked at it, I thought, no, I'm not just going to just sit here and talk at you. So I chopped it down to 4 pages, just some headings, in case we get in some kind of a void where we need to. I would just use these as prompts to stir your imagination and get you going. So I can start by giving you some idea of my, you've got the flyer, it was on your seats. I think on that flyer it tells you that I've been at this astral projection thing for 40 years or more. It was actually 1971 when I first did it, so it's well over 40 years. So I'll give you some idea of how it happened to me. And before that, I'm going to start with something that's really quite extraordinary. I can't emphasize that enough, but you'll see when I explain it. When I was a child, I must have been about three or four. It was a warm August morning, August the 4th, 1945. Some of you know now what I'm talking about. And I was playing in the back garden with a tennis ball, and my mother was talking to a neighbour over the little dividing wall. We lived in terrace houses, rows upon rows upon rows of terraced houses, mostly attached to the mill that was just up the street. Everybody worked in the mill. And so they all had these little 2 up, 2 down houses. My mother's chatting over the wall. It's about 10:30 in the morning. My father worked on the railway, and so he worked nights a lot, and he worked late shifts and shift work. And this week he'd been working the late shift, and he would normally be up for breakfast like the rest of us, but he wasn't on this morning, he was still in bed. 10:30ish, he comes out into the back garden in his vest, which was full of holes, because It was his favourite vest, and although my mother chucked it in the bin so many times, he pulled it back out again. He liked his holy vest. And he had his trousers and his holy vest on, and his braces hanging down, and he said, "The buggers have gone and done it." And we all, I didn't know what he was talking about. My mother said, "What? Buggers have done what?" And my neighbours, he said, "The Americans. It must be the Americans. They've dropped an atom bomb in Japan. And it's chaos up there. Chaos." He said, "I've been at it all night long. I'm knackered." He said, what do you mean knackered? Well, you see, my father was what you would call an astral helper, or an invisible helper. For many years he'd worked on the astral plane, helping people in trouble. Many people across the world do this. And whenever there's a disaster or some national catastrophe, people like my father, if they're asleep, and some if they're not asleep, get called to that scene to help with the people that are dying and leaving their bodies and entering the astral plane. Well, on that occasion, when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, it was 8:30 in the morning. The children were going to school, people were going to work, the buses were full, the streets were crowded. Small island, not part of the war, nothing to do with the war, there was no military presence there at all. The bomb went off, and 100,000 people were vaporized like that. And you can't imagine that, can you? There were shadows on the walls where people had been stood. Just dark marks. So, you see, what you won't probably understand is that when you die, normally in your sleep or even with a road accident or whatever, your etheric body, your energy body, separates from the physical body just like it does at night when you go to sleep or when you have an anesthetic. Except, in the case of death, in the case of sleep and anesthetic, it only withdraws a little bit, enough to make you unconscious. But in death, it continues and withdraws more and more and more till it separates completely. Now, in that process, layers of the etheric brain, which store memory, release that memory, and you go through what's called a past life review. Now, Madame Blavatsky said, when you're in the presence of someone that's just died, don't chatter and talk. Don't leave them because they're busy. They're dead, but they're busy. They're going right back through their lives, looking at cause and effect. And that process enables the soul to decide on the best sort of course of action for the next life. You could compare this to going to sleep at night. You could say, before I go to sleep tonight, I'll look back over my day and I'll recount all the things I've done and the people I've talked to and what we talked about and what I said and what I did. And where I find something that it's disturbing, where I maybe caused a little bit of ill feeling, or I'll examine that and I'll think, well, tomorrow I'll give them a ring. I'll phone Joe up and I'll say, yesterday, Joe, I didn't mean any offence. I was only thinking aloud, and it's all right, it's all right. You wouldn't want to leave these things if you had a choice of putting them right. Well, it's the same with life. Life, from life to life, is the same as from day to day. It's just a bigger event, that's all. Now then, what I'm getting at is, these etheric layers, which are subatomic, you could call them quantum nowadays because of the new quantum science. If you got blown up with some dynamite in a quarry, say, no problem. You would die, you would withdraw, and you go through your past life review. You get blown up in a nuclear bomb, and you are vaporized, and that vaporized takes place at the quantum level as well as the physical level. So it vaporizes your etheric body as well as your physical body. And the problem with that is, you have no memory of who you are, where you were, what you're doing, what your name was, where you lived, anything. Now, when we die normally, we'll remember all that. But these people in Hiroshima, my father was there helping, they didn't know who they were, what it was. They were in a total trance. Their eyes were empty, he said. It was pathetic. And they had to be helped. They had to be helped until higher beings could come along and take them into the astral plane and look after them. It would take weeks, months to bring them back to themselves, to their life memories. So that's what he was referring to when he came out at 10:30 in the morning. He said he'd gone to sleep about 12 o'clock. It was 12:30 our time when it went off. And he'd just gone off to sleep when he was flung across the world to this event in Japan. He didn't know to start with where he was going, but he worked out it was Japan because he was a Japanese type people. And everybody was saying it was a bomb, it was an atomic bomb. Look at it, look what it's done. So we knew at 10:30, and it went around the neighbourhood. By lunchtime, everybody knew in our neighbourhood that the bomb had been dropped in Japan somewhere. It didn't come on the World News till about 7:30 that night on BBC World News. Yet all our neighbourhood knew about it. I often wonder why the authorities didn't come knocking on our door. So my father had a long history of doing this as an astral helper. And when I was... No, I'm not going to give my age away. You can work it out if you want. But in 1970, I said to my father, I want to do this. Tell me how to do it. And he said, oh, no, I'm not going to tell you. So why not? I said, well, you've got to work it out for yourself. I did. I said, well, yeah, but you had no one to ask. I've got you to ask. Tell me. He said, no, it doesn't work like that, son. He said, if I tell you how to do it, it won't make much difference. You've got to work on yourself. That's what you've got to do. I spent months and months, over a year, working on myself. He said, before I even got a glimpse of it. So you have a go and then come back to me later, tell me what you're up to. So I did. I started thinking about it, the idea was when you're going to sleep, you start doing some process and then you try and not fall asleep, but come out of your body fully awake, instead of coming out of your body into some dream or total unconsciousness. I didn't get anywhere. I really did. I had some weird dreams, I must admit. Dreaming was a bit more fun, but that's about all I could say. And I went back to him and I said, I'm having good dreams, but that's it. You know, what am I doing wrong? It's about your emotions, he said. You've got to control your emotions, and you know you're hot-headed. I've always told you that. You're too quick. You don't take your time. You're no patience. You think you know it all. You used to call me E-nose. Because you'd say, says that. I said, no. E-nose. I must have been a swine. I mean, it must have been really hard bringing me up. And I've got a son exactly the same. So I'm getting paid back now. Although he really does know. So if I need something now, I ask him, Stephen, well, do this, do that. So basically, he said it's about your emotions. You've got to get a grip of your emotions. You've got to calm down. And all that smoking won't help. If God wanted you to smoke, he'd put a chimney on your head. See, Barry's got a chimney on his head. So he's all right. I said, I don't think it's smoking. Oh, no, you wouldn't think it was smoking, would you? No, he knows. So he said, well, that's not going to help. He said, think about the things that get you emotionally and examine them. And examine yourself in the light of those. So what are you frightened of? Spiders? Yeah, I'm frightened of spiders. What the hell for? Well, it's really not going to harm you. Well, you're not in Australia or somewhere or Malaysia where they're going to come and bite your face off. They're just little English spiders. I don't like them. Well then, what else what are you frightened of? I said, heights. I can't get on the step ladder, me. I said, well, there you got to start there, haven't you? Spiders and heights. go home and think about it. So before long I was picking spiders up. And I got over that. It wasn't too bad. Once you tackle these things, they're not as bad as you think. They're just subjective fears, aren't they? A mate of mine said, let's go caving. I said, what do you mean cave? He said, go down holes in the ground, it's great. I said, it'd be dark, won't it? He said, we'll take a light. It'd be dirty, we'll take overalls. Come on, it'd be great, it'd be great. So we went potholing, and we went into some... I really should have said I'm frightened of holes in the ground as well. Because we went to one place, and it was a copper mine. It had been. And so these poor miners had been crawling through the rocks, digging away in front of themselves and passing it behind themselves in little passages like that, following the seams of copper, hacking away at them until it runs out. Then, you know, and they'd been doing this with candles in their heart. So and there were some big ones. So I went through the big ones and we enjoyed that. And then we got to smaller and smaller. So my friend said, look at this one here, this is great. This look at this, it's brilliant. Look at this, I can see it's a bend down there. It's about 15 feet in. What's around the bend? That size, yeah? Just a bit bigger than our telly. Then, not the telly now. I said, well, I'm not going in there. He said, come on. I said, well, look, you go in first. And if it goes somewhere, see the idea about pottery, it's got to go somewhere. If it's a dead end, it's a waste of time, and it's got to go to somewhere else. That's what all potholers want, is a pot or a cave that finds another cave further on, you can come out somewhere else. So you go in, and if it goes somewhere, you tug on the rope, three pulls and I'll follow you in. 2 pulls, I'll pull you back. So he's crawling off into this pothole. The rope's going out, it goes around the bend and still pulling the rope out. About 100 foot of rope here, the climbing rope we found. We kept going out. And in the end it stopped going out. I thought, what's he doing now? Then boom, boom, boom. Oh no. I don't think we should do this. No? I'm not happy about... So I had to go in, didn't I? And it's like, it's this kind of job, you know, you're doing that and you're scraping your toes to try and make some movement. All your clothes are like, you can't breathe. You stop, you can't breathe because your chest won't expand. Oh God, I'm just stupid. I'm stupid. When I got there, 90 feet later, he sat there. He sat there curled up in a little bulbous space at the end of this tunnel. It's a dead end. And he's grinning at me. That was good, wasn't it? I said, no, it wasn't good. Terrible. I said, I'm going to get back out now. That's it. I'm not going to trust you again. But I couldn't turn around, could I? The only space to turn around, well, he was in it. And he couldn't come past me because I was in the passageway. So I said, this needs some thinking, right? I know, I like you and you're my mate, but we're going to have to get very intimate here. So by curling around each other and nearly getting stuck about 6 times, I managed to get back first and work my way back out. Because if you try and back out, you can't, because everything rockers up until in the end you're stuck. So you had to go forwards, so it meant turning around. So anyway, that's the kind of thing we did. But the next thing is, we moved to Wales, and there's no potholes, not up in North Wales anyway. So there's all these people climbing rocks. So I said, well, we've got all this gear, we've got ropes, carabiners and everything, we've got shoes, and so, let's climb some rocks then. And I thought, hang on, why did I say that? Because I'm frightened of heights. I said, you can go first anyway. I always sent him off first. So I started a career as a rock climber, and we did all the classic climbs. I was frightened to death at first, but I overcome it. And the idea is you not get rid of your fear. That would be stupid. But you let that fear inform you to be careful and to plan and to organise yourself. That's what it does. You can't get rid of fear. Is irrational. It's a safety valve. You have to use it to make things safe, not run away. And then my wife bought me a book for that Christmas, 1970-71, Explorations Out of the Body or something by Sylvan Muldoon and Harold Carrington. That was my Christmas present, because she knew I was trying this. So I read this book, and it gives some exercises you could do. So I started doing the exercises every night, all through January, all through February, all through March, all through April. And then in May, one night, I was just dropping off to sleep. I was going through this exercise, a big buzzing in my head, and I went woof, and I was up against the ceiling. What? And I looked down, and there I was in bed. Looked like I was dead, actually, like a corpse. But no, it was that. I shot back in, so fast. You know, when you were kids, you put electrodes on a frog's leg. Well, we did it years ago. The leg was, well, that was me shooting into my body. Nearly fell out. And my wife went, "What the hell?" Just pulled all the covers off me and turned over, talking about noisy buggers or something. I've done it. Oh, shut up! I'm going to sleep here. And that was the first time I did it. So I thought, right, tomorrow night I'll do it again now. No, it was about 6 months later before it happened again. I was giving up. And what happened was I fell asleep and I was dreaming. I was on this roof, high roof, and my climbing friend was down on the floor saying, "Come down." And I'm saying, "Well, I can't get down." "What do you mean come down?" "Just come down. I can't get down." And I stood up on the ridge of the roof to walk to the other end, and it was windy, so windy. Next minute, I teetered and the wind blew me, and I went off the roof and I started flying. And next minute, I was going across our street and across the main road, flying, woo! So now I should explain that going across our street and our main road is the physical world, and I wasn't in a physical body, that was in bed. So I was in my etheric body, going across our main road, flying across the town in my etheric body, which is what you will do if you come out at the physical level. You can walk through walls, you can fly, you can go at the speed of light. If you walk through a wall or you put your hand in a wall, you feel a vibration like pins and needles or like hailstones. A lot of people just open a door and go through a door. And I used to wonder about this, saying, well, you just walk through the door. Well, how can you open the door anyway? It's a physical door. But it's all subjective. If you think you've got to open the door to get out, that's what you'll do. But if you don't think about it, you'll just walk through the door. Now, this afternoon, Marion referred to her first husband, Arthur Eddington, who was a scientist. And he decided to have a go at this, didn't he? And he found himself swirling and whirling around and then ended up by the ceiling and then came back into his body. And he decided he wanted to, it was because he hadn't gone far enough out. So he tried again a few nights, and he'd actually opened the window so he could get out. And he did come out, and she says he came out and he headed for the window, and he was trying to get through the window when he felt two hands on the side of his head, who turned him and pulled him back and pushed him back into his body. Any guess as to who those hands were? An astral helper. Because they knew that wasn't his path. That wasn't his path. He was a scientist, he was a theosophist. He was part of the esoteric group, wasn't he? Esoteric science group. They were doing good work. It wouldn't be right for him to be distracted like that, because once you start that game, you're distracted for a long, long time. It takes over your life. It's a big affair. And that was typical of an astral helper. Well, don't all shout at once. Yes?
So very quickly, do you help other people when you move on to the inner planes? And how do you see your job as being, or your duty to help others in the way your father did?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Could you say anything about the way in which you help others?
Yes.
On the other planes?
Absolutely, yes. So apart from Hiroshima and Nagasaki and things like that, I remember, I forgot the dates now, but it's around about 2008, 10, something like that, when I was talking about this to a group in Conway, and there was quite a large, about 30 people there, and I said to them at one point, just as a matter of interest, how many of you are having trouble sleeping or waking up more tired than when you went to bed? There's a bit of a lull, and then hands started to go up till about 3/4 of them put hands up. I said, okay, well, how many of you have had dreams in that time of like water, including a lot of water? Oh, yes, water, yes. And this woman said, I was holding a baby in my arms and it was water everywhere. I said, well, this is about January. I said, do you know what happened just after Christmas? A tsunami in southern India. Yeah. And now we come on to a point that I really must make, and that is that you could be an astral helper almost every night of the week and never ever know about it. These people didn't know, but they were doing it. I could tell by what they said. They were being called there by their sympathetic reaction, by their compassion. But their brain, etheric, astral configuration wasn't such that they could see it in full consciousness and bring it back to the waking state. But the more they realised what had happened, the more images came to them. Oh, I remember doing this, and so they were starting to bring the images then back into their physical brain because of what we were talking about. Yes, I mean, car accidents are a good one. Very often you'll see at a car accident where the rescuers or the police or the ambulance people, whatever, are trying to cut someone out of a car because they're trapped. And they're in absolute agony, but they won't let go and go unconscious. They're just too frightened. They're just clinging on. And all this is going on around with the cutters and all the rest, and people. Astral helpers will come along and put them to sleep. They'll put their hands here, and another one will put their hands there, and within moments they'll go unconscious. And then the emergency services can do their work without all the screaming and going on and carrying on that takes place. That's one example. A friend of my son's, the clever one, he was moving into a flat with some of his mates. He was leaving home. And he didn't have a car or anything, so my son said, can you help Andy go and get his stuff from his mum's, because we haven't got a car or anything. So I said, yeah, I'll come down with you, I'll bring it back in the car. So we went down into town, went in, she had a jeweller shop, we went into the shop, into the back, she took us into the back, into the living quarters. And she kept looking at me a bit weird. And I just thought, well, I know this woman. Anyway, she went upstairs with Andy to get his things together for him, with him. And when she come down, she was still looking at me. And then when I was going, she stopped me and shook my hand and said, thank you, thank you. So I said, oh, I'm just giving him a lift, that's no problem, right? When we got in the car, he said, you know what my mum said to me? I said, no, I said, he said, for the last 3 nights she's been with you in this, you've been teaching her to swim. I said, was that her? Because I had been teaching someone to swim. I said, yes, it was her, I remember. That's why I thought she was familiar. He said, and it freaked her out because she knows it's you. It was you when you walked in. She nearly had a heart attack. Why are you teaching her to swim? I said, well, it's a subjective thing, you see. Some people, if I'm teaching someone to fly because they don't want to risk letting go, it's like someone in the swimming pool and won't let go of the side. So I often use water in their imagination as an example. I teach them to swim, but in actual fact, I'm teaching them to fly. At some point, the swimming pool will go and they'll be flying. So that was an example of an almost neighbour who was being helped by me. You can get involved in people's problems as well, especially when we move on to the astral plane, where the emotions live. There's a lot of psychological problems that are dealt with by astral helpers. Anybody else got a question? Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, do you only help if somebody asks for help? Or do you push your help onto people if they're not even asking?
No, they have to ask for it.
They don't ask for it?
Well, if they're in distress, that is a call for help.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no, but you have to discriminate, you know. I've been to a lot of situations where to interfere would just make it worse. And you just got to stand by and see if it turns out that you can be of help, or just leave them.
But the way you said with the atom bomb, you made it, maybe I got it wrong, but it sounded like you were saying it's not the right way for them to go.
It isn't.
They're getting pulverized into a vapor,
Mm.
and so is their other body.
Mm. But the astral body...
Isn't that the destiny that their soul chose for them in that life?
The soul wouldn't be vaporized, only the physical and etheric.
But isn't that the destiny that it chose for them to enter into that body that would be vaporized?
I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
Is it their karma sort of thing to end up like that?
You can't take into account karma, because if you see someone walking into a road with a bus coming, you say, well, it's their karma, and look the other way.
Not necessarily, but I'm just saying I wouldn't necessarily think it was wrong if it did happen that way.
Well, there's higher agencies, you see, who call. In those situations, it's organised by higher beings, not by people like me or my father. We're called. The people in the meeting had been called to the tsunami. You don't have they don't sort of knock on your door and say, you know, do you want to come and sort this out with us? You just get called there because your empathic vibrations are just make you suited to that, you know. Not all astral helpers would have been called to that situation, but a lot were. Because of the sheer volume of people that have been killed instantly. I mean, you're talking over 100,000 people within a few seconds. And it's like when you've got a disaster with the emergency service taking everybody to hospital, to casualties. And they have a program in casualties, in hospitals, and they move into this disaster program where everybody knows their part. But there are some disasters, like a plane crash, that are just overwhelmed them. And they have to call in nurses and doctors that are off duty and from other hospitals. And it's a bit like that, you see. In the normal run of things, people dying is not a problem. Or a small little disaster is not a problem. But that was a big one. Yes.
In your astral travels, how far can you go? Is there like a touching point when it becomes dangerous and you might not come back?
No, you can't not come back. You can't decide not to come back. It's hard enough to go in the first place, and they might not come back. No, I mean, some people's fear of that stop them doing it because they think they won't get back. I've had so many people say to me, oh, I'd like to do it, but what if I don't get back? But you just can't not get back. You are joined. In fact, there's a silver cord that stretches from your physical body through your etheric body and or your astral body to wherever you're going. It stretches to infinity. But when you're close up, like within the few meters, it's as thick as your finger. And it's silver grey, and you can see it pulsing with light. Some people never see it. Mostly, I think, because they're distracted with things. But when you do see it, it's there, it's quite clear. And when you're in the same room as your physical body, that cord tends to want to pull you back in. It's like a big elastic, but it's got lots of strength at that point. As you go further and further away, it gets weaker, it gets thinner, and then you can move more freely. Which is why Arthur Eddington, in a sense, wanted to get away from his body. He knew his body was pulling him back. Yes?
Do you project to the will in the working state?
Well, right now, Marion also said about people leaving their body while they were awake physically and doing things like digging a garden, she said, and walking down the road. Well, for years and years I was a driving instructor. At this point in time I was a driving instructor. And once I got into this etheric at this point it was etheric. I didn't get into the astral straight away. I was etheric. I was really getting quite caught up in it. And I remember the first time this happened, I was giving a lesson and it was coming on to tea time. And I lived in a busy town, Stockport, South Manchester. And I had a lady with me who wasn't that far advanced at that point. She was ready to see the traffic, but she needed help. You know, it wasn't like just get going. So we pulled out of a quiet road onto a busy road, and then we come to traffic lights where the main road was, and I said, you're going to turn left here and join this flow of traffic and to the left, and we keep going and we'll decide where to go when we get up the road a bit. So the lights changed to green, she went off and she moved in. She turned left, she started driving along, and we started coming to a roundabout, which I knew we would do. All of a sudden, I was looking at the car from about 40 feet in front of it. I could see myself and I could see the lady driving, and I could see it coming down. I was moving with it. And in the car, I could see the road, but it was, I could see, you see, the physical world is exactly the same in the etheric counterpart, except it's silvery somehow. It's like, in the daylight, you would hardly notice it, but I noticed it. And I knew I was projected. I wasn't myself at that point. I was out there. And I was holding on to my consciousness in the car with a little bit of effort, you know. And I thought, God, this is no good. I can't be doing this. She's having to drive with this. Come to a roundabout now. And in my panic, I managed to pull myself back in time to say, we're going left at the roundabout. I didn't intend originally to go left, but at this point, anywhere would do. Simplest. And I asked her to stop the car, and I was sat there thinking, God, this is no good. And she said, are you all right? I said, no, I'm not feeling too well. Anyway, we'll carry on. We've only got another 20 minutes. But, you know, it didn't happen for another couple of weeks or so, but it happened again. And it started to get a bit regular, this, and I got used to it. And I could cope quite well, you know. It wasn't a problem. My physical body could carry on giving the lesson, while my etheric body was watching from the outside. But I decided this wasn't good. I went and seen my dad, and I said, this is what's happening to me. And he said, no, you've got to take steps to ground yourself more. You're getting too, you know, this is you, isn't it? He said, your emotions. You're getting too, carried away, son. You're getting carried away. So how do you ground yourself? He said, well, you've got to start, you know, grounding is about being in the physical world, doing physical things and not thinking anything beyond it. You know, it's like you could do physical exercise, you could start digging or just doing physical exercises, or walking in the woods, or walking down the street, or just taking your mind off all this other stuff until it stops. So I did that, and it did stop. And when I carried on again later, it didn't happen again. But it's just that strange, you know.
So do you sit down and project at will now? Can someone do it?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you now.
Do you sit down and project at will now?
Yeah, you don't project at will. That's a fallacy.
Well, so it just happens involuntarily?
Yes, that's right. It did.
Yes.
It did at that time. It happened involuntarily. When you go to bed and you practice it, you go into sleep and you project out. That's at will, if you like, because you're willing to do it. But when you get to
when you do that?
What do you see?
Oh, you go through certain exercises, but we can come to that in a bit. Or you can buy the book. I would definitely advise you to buy the book. It's got all the answers.
What you saw?
Did you say you saw what I saw?
He wants to know what you see when you're out of
Oh, right.
what do you see?
But there's two places you can go to when you're out. You can go to this world, or you can go to the astral world. We're talking about this world so far. So when I was flying across the town, across the main road and over the town, you know, people were coming out of clubs and talking on corners and getting off buses and things like that. And I could see them. At other times, you would see, if it was very late at night, when you've been to sleep a long while, then you come out, you see the milkman coming delivering milk, you know, and stuff like that. Whatever's happening, you can see it. They don't see you.
You don't see it. I mean, what's the difference between what you see and what is there?
No difference. Just a bit silvery.
Just a bit silvery.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, yeah.
Not enough to...
Silvery, that's it.
Not enough, yeah, not enough to make any big difference to what you're looking at.
Yes.
Isabella, you have a question?
Eric, could you say a bit more about the three bodies you've mentioned, the physical, the astral and the etheric? For instance, sort of where are they, inside or outside?
As if I haven't heard this before, you know. Right, you know, let me just ask you a simple question. Some of you will have heard this, so don't worry. Do you believe that you've got a spirit? You know, you're a physical person. I'm talking to physical people here. You've got bodies. Do you believe you've got a spirit? Everybody believe? Put your hand up. Do you believe you've got a spirit? Wrong. You haven't got a spirit. You are a spirit. You're a spirit that's got a body. No, it's a trick, isn't it? I get them every time with that one. So you are a spirit. You're incarnated. You've taken on several bodies in order to experience this world. Just like if I wanted to become a deep-sea diver instead of a rock climber, I'd have to put on all again the lead boots, the big heavy suit and the helmet and the pipe going back to the ship where they can pump air to me, so that I could experience the environment deep in the ocean. But this is it. This is your diving suit. Do you remember the film Avatar? Brilliant film, that. These are your avatars. You know, the avatar, he's asleep he's unconscious in a pod, isn't he? And in his mind, he's wearing this avatar body in this other world. And he's interacting, he's flying around with it, and he's talking to people. I see you, you know, and it's all this. This is it. This is your avatar. You don't live here. You're visiting here. You think you live here because you've been here long enough to get used to it. But once you've gone, you realise that this is just a few moments. This is not where you live. This is where you carry out your designs, where you experience, where you account for your karma, where you make more karma, where you interact with people that you're involved with, entangled with, as Ted would say, and where you grow, where you evolve and grow your consciousness. And your consciousness is your interaction with everything around you. It's not something that you're wearing on your back or something, or up here. It's your action of being aware of everything, interacting with things. So you've got spirit. You are spirit. That spirit has got it's Atma Buddhi Manas. The Manas part, the mind part, is the higher mind, the abstract mind, not the one we're using now. And the other part of that mind is the one we're using now, the logical mind. The one that means I can find my way home tomorrow. The abstract mind couldn't do that. It'd be wandering around forever. It has got no concept of left and right, up and down in English language or anything. It deals with symbols and abstract feelings. And then you've got, working in tandem with the lower mind, you've got an emotional body. And now you say, where are they? They're all here. They're not up there somewhere. And someone said, oh, your spirit's about 3 foot up there, above your head. Sorry? What? I need a stepladder then. Oh, for goodness sake. This is my spirit wearing bodies. Where else would it be? So, you know, at my core is a beautiful, it's a beautiful aura, which is indigo, violet. It's beautiful. And it's about 6 foot wide by about 9 or 12 feet tall. It's a lovely oval. If you saw it, you'd think you were looking at God. It's that beautiful. Yours is that beautiful. And then within that is the mental body, which is flashing with blues and yellows and intellect and thought forms, all the thought forms that are happening. And then within that is an ovoid of the astral body, which is about just a bit wider than your shoulders and a bit taller than your head, down to your feet. And then within that is your physical body encased in an etheric body. And within the etheric body and the physical body is a health aura. It's a very fine film of atoms which is stands up like little hairs. Now, if you can find anything black in front of you to put your hand up to, you will see that little faint light of hairs going around your finger, and you can actually do that and pull them apart. They sort of that's your health aura. And if you're clairvoyant and someone's not well, so they've got bad kidneys, where the kidneys are, you'll see it's dark, and there's no flow down there. The kidney's damaged. So that's a health aura. They call it a health aura. But all these are together in one thing. So the only place where you have all your bodies in one place is here in the physical world. This is the only place where you're absolutely complete. This is why you do all your work here. This is why you do all your experience here. This is why I need to look at the clock, because Damon's going to sit on his seat. Am I that close to finishing? We haven't gone on the astral yet. We're still on.
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Yeah.
What's the difference between lucid dreaming and astral projection?
That's a good one. That'll take me to the astral, won't it? So when I was on my rooftop, you know, and that's a lucid dream, because to me it felt real. I mean, it felt really, really real. And you have dreams and they're all mixed up a bit, and sometimes they're quite real, but a lucid dream is when you know you're dreaming. Now, one of the techniques that are used to get into the astral plane with full consciousness is to try to determine your own dreams. You set out at night to dream a certain thing. You can have a story in your head. Fairy tales are great for this, and there's examples in the book. And what you do is you lie there, as you feel sleep coming on, you start going through this scenario in your mind, and you visualize it, you imagine it, and you put your feelings into it. And then suddenly you'll find that you're dreaming this imagining. You're dreaming now, and you know you're dreaming. And you've got control of that dream. It's wonderful, really, because those are the best dreams. And, you know, little stretch in imagination will tell you that you can dream what you want to dream once you get used to doing that. But the thing is, from there you can step into the astral. You can literally step out of the dream into the astral world. Now the thing is, you dream in the astral world all the time. You may not be aware of it every night, but when you are aware of a dream, you wake up in the morning and you think, God, that was an amazing dream. Then you think, that was an amazing experience. And you think, hang on, I just woke up. Oh God, it was only a dream. You know it was a dream because you were in bed, but you were dreaming about flying around or something. So it must have been a dream because you're in bed. No, you were actually doing that on the astral plane, in your astral body. But your mind can only accept it as a dream because it can't account for that kind of consciousness. It hasn't got used to it. Once it can, you can step into that world, and it's a world in its own right. It has a lot of the character, it mimics the physical world, but not. The etheric is actually a copy of the physical world. In fact, the physical world is moulded into the etheric. The etheric is its mould. But the astral world has a similar mould, but it's not as tight as that. So, for instance, if you're in the astral world and you go down to a seashore and you look at the waves, what you thought was waves, when you look at them closely, are threads, coloured threads moving along. And they're the colours you can't describe. They're absolutely beyond description. So, Alice in Wonderland is a perfect example of one kind of astral experience. Lewis Carroll and all them, they were all taking opium. And they were all tripping out on the astral plane. And you can see examples of that. 1 minute you're small, next minute you're big. There's a rabbit talking to you. For goodness sake, But they're good stories, aren't they? And they become part of the mythology of us now. And poets, artists. Van Gogh was so frustrated because he could see these colours, but he couldn't find them on his palette. He couldn't mix them. In the end, he sliced his ear off in frustration. I mean, don't expect me to do that. So, yeah, the astral plane is really heaven. It really is. Anything you can imagine, you can see it, do it, and feel it in the astral world, because the astral world is moldable by thought. The astral world is fluid. It's like the water in the glass. It's the shape of the glass because the glass is containing it. So it would be the shape of my thoughts because my thoughts are containing it. So if I want to see a walk in a beautiful valley, that valley becomes the glass and the astral world molds into it.
Sorry,
Sure, get into it.
astral travels, do you meet other entities?
Did I do?
Meet other entities.
Yes, of course you do. Yes, yes. People are there. People that are dead are there. And people are there that are travelling as well. And there are the halls of learning. Don't forget that. On the higher astral, there's the halls of learning. It's been there for centuries. You can visit those. You can have instruction from there. You can see angels. You can meet masters. It's all happening there on the higher astral. The lower astral is a bit dodgy. You don't want to go there, really. I mean, I got chased back into my body by something from there, and he got hold of me by the throat, and I was choking. And I was sleeping separate bedrooms, so I was in my bedroom, my wife's in the next bedroom, and I was trying to call out to her. I was awake now with this thing clutching my throat, and I was, and I knew in my mind that if I could just make enough sound to wake her up, she would come in, and this thing would go. If my wife came in, most of you would go, you know. I'm not saying she's ugly, but when the rats leave home when she comes in. No, so basically, I was choking. I couldn't make a sound. It took all my willpower and all my physical energy to start croaking. And I must have been 3 or 4 minutes, and finally I heard her say, "Eric, is that you? What's going on?" See, she only has to speak, and
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I've had these experiences of astral projection or travel, and it was very bad, a couple of very bad experiences.
yeah, you can have them.
And I
Yeah.
was just wondering if, like, my soul, or whatever it is not on the right level, and I can't get myself.
You really have to work on your emotions. Now, at that time, I was going through some rubbish. And that's what had centered me in that lower area. For that time, I should have sorted myself. But after that, I did sort myself out. I had a good talk to myself. And I sorted it out. It was a bad thing going on in my head. And I got rid of it. I sorted it out. Next time I went, everything was clear and fine. Now, I'll tell you a little experience. Because we didn't have a lot of money, I think I'd lost a job at the time. There was a second-hand shop near me, and it was winter, and we were quite cold. We couldn't afford the heating. So in bed, it was cold at night. And I saw this electric blanket for sale cheap. It was only like £1 or something. So I bought it, and on my way home, I called at my dad's. I said, "Look what I've got. It's only £1." He said, "What? You're not going to use that, are you?" I said, "Why not?" He said, "It's got scorch marks where the wires are." I said, "Well, it's all right. It's not come through." I plugged it in. It got warm. "Oh no," he said, "you're stupid." I said, "Well, look, I won't leave it on. I'll just put it on before we go to bed to warm the bed." "Oh, I know you say that, but you won't." So I did that, and I did switch it off a few nights. And then one night, I was on the astral. I was talking to this group of people, very nice people, in fact. I was really enjoying my time talking to them. And my father comes up on the astral. "Wake up." I said, "What?" He said, "Wake up." I said, "I'm just talking to these people here." He said, "Wake up. You've got to wake up." I said, "Leave me alone." "Wake up!" I woke up. The blanket was on. It was scorched. It was starting to smoke. He'd come along. He didn't trust me. He knew I'd leave it on. He came along. He seen the light on the plug. He knew it was switched on. He knew it was burning. He come and got me. But he was an experienced traveller, you see. He could do that. You can go to people by thinking about them. If you focus on a person's image, you can go there. And it doesn't matter where they are. It could be in Australia or anywhere. Just speed of light and you're there. Now, Robert Monroe wrote a wonderful book, Journeys Out of the Body. I would recommend it. After you bought my book, by Roberts. And he had some extraordinary experiences. And he sent a guy from Philadelphia, Steve, 6'6", black guy. He walked through our village, and all the Welsh neighbours came out and watched him go past. And he came from Robert Monroe, and he said, Robert wants you to go over there and work. I said, I'm going over there. I've got this. We're living a good life here. We've got small holding, self-sufficiency. Well, live in Chicago or somewhere. He said, well, it'll take you and all your family over. You get a house, you got a car, you got everything. You be manager of this place. You wouldn't go. And I think he's still running. That Monroe Institute is still running.
Yes.
Yeah, there we are, yeah. But I didn't like the idea of, selling a book's one thing, but running an institution with all these people coming, paying hundreds of pounds, and lying there going...
Pam, you have a question? Yes. What is the furthest that you personally have travelled?
The moon.
Not further than the moon, not to any planets or to...
No, just to the moon. And I thought it was a damn lonely place, to be honest.
Right. You didn't see anything unusual there?
Well, the Earth. It looks amazing.
But I mean, on itself.
I didn't see anybody else there, no. It wasn't Apollo. Apollo hadn't gone there at that point. No, I kept going. You can go into the atmosphere quite as a matter of course, really, and you can see the curvature of the Earth and everything. And it's tempting to just keep going because you don't have to breathe, do you? So I keep going, looking at the Earth as it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Then you realise you're next to the moon. Wow, look at this now. But after a while, you look in there and you think, that's where I live, All the life on that planet, that's my home, and what am I doing here? Once was enough, really. I don't know how far you could go. You could probably go... I really don't know.
Well, I think Robert Monroe wrote about travelling outside the solar system.
Does he?
To the Andromeda, and different galaxies.
Yeah.
Because he said he got bored with staying around here.
But then, of course, he's only working on the etheric, you see.
Right.
And you really got to get into the astral for the real deal, really, yeah.
Elizabeth has a question.
I read a book called Psychic Warriors. I don't know if you know it.
Psychic
Warriors.
warriors.
I don't remember who wrote it, but it was about these psychics who do this sort of astral travel, but they go back in time and they could find like Second World War pilots and find where their bodies were.
Is this a novel?
Pardon?
Is this a novel?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. So you don't think that's possible? I mean, these were, anyway, I understand it was true. The thing is, if that is true, why can't everybody find Madeline McGough?
I don't know if it's true because I've never had any indication of being able to time travel at all. I've been all over the damn place, but that's never been a factor that I've ever seen even remotely possible.
And you've not heard of that?
No, I haven't, no.